for being Friday. You guys are not so many today because you guys, some of you are out and enjoying life, which is also very much allowed. Now, in the last class, we talked about probate and we introduced probate and we introduced the question. We introduced the question of probate, the law of succession, and various aspects. We introduced the question of wives within the law of succession, children, and generally dependents. Now, from that discussion, is there any of you or any of us that is having a question, something that is not making sense or something that they found out while they were reading, so that you can clarify right away and move? Okay, nobody. Now, today I want us to talk about wills. I want us to start the discussion around tested succession. Now, it is very important, guys. It is very, very important for you guys to understand that probate really is divided into three. There are three divisions of probate. The first one is tested succession. Now, tested simply means there is a will that was left behind. The second one is intestacy. There is no will that was left behind. And then thirdly is just procedural, which is the question of the obtaining of grants of representation. Okay, the three grants or the limited grants. Now, our first main discussion is the question to do with tested succession. Now, this will involve everything that surrounds the making and leaving behind of a will. Okay, that is exactly what we are going to discuss. So the making and leaving behind of a will, that is what we are going to be discussing in this class. Now, as we do that, it is important for you to understand, just open your mind to understand a few issues and a few aspects. Okay, tested succession. So what do you need to understand about tested succession? You need to understand the concept of a will, and I will be showing you how a will looks like. And like I've said, sometimes you might have been told in your classes that nobody will set for you the drafting of a will. When I was in the Kenya School of Law, also we were told that nobody will tell you to draft a will in an exam. But if you look at the last paper that was done in April, there's an entire question of preparation of a will. So there is nothing that you can bet against. There's nothing you can bet against. The best you can do is to do your best and revise and leave no stone unturned. So by the end of this class, we shall be looking at a sample will and what you need to have inside a will. But a will is very simple. A will is very, very simple. We just need to understand the key main, okay? The key main issues around that, okay? That is what we are saying. That is exactly what we are saying. Now, the first thing is, what are the various categories of wills? Now, in probate or in your studies, you're going to find that there are two main categories of wills. We have the written wills, and then we have the oral wills. The written wills and the oral wills. That is the main category of wills that we are going to be dealing with. Written wills and oral wills. Okay, that is the first thing you are going to understand. The next thing that you need to understand is, what are some of the features of making a will? Why must you make a will? And what are the features of a will? For instance, if we are looking at a document and we are saying that this document is called a will, then the question then is, what are some of the features of this document that we are calling a will? What are some of the features of this document that we are calling a will? Are you together? So that is something that also you need to understand. The next thing is, how do we come up with a valid will? Something that is a valid will. Okay, how do we come up with a valid will? So you have a written will or you have an oral will. How do you make sure that the will that is written is valid? And how do you make sure that the will or that the oral will that you're leaving behind is also valid? That is the discussion that we're going to have as well And then you need to understand the question of revocation of wills. How do you revoke a will? Whether it is oral or it is written. How do you revoke a will? The next thing you need to understand also is the question of construction of wills. Now, this construction is not construction in the lines of building. No, it is the constructions in the lines of interpretation. So sometimes we will be required to interpret a will. Wills are interpreted. Okay, wills are interpreted. Are we together? If there's a will, we have to interpret it. If there's a problem in that will, that is different from grants. Are we together? So we talk about interpretation of wills and the rules of interpretation of wills. We shall also talk about the properties that are excluded from testacy. What are these properties that you cannot have in the will? The excluded properties. That is why I talk about the question of joint tenancy, survivorship. We talk about donatio, and we shall also talk about the question to do with nomination. And then after that, we shall talk about the question of provision for dependents. And then we talk about the gifts and the doctrines of gifts. And then after that, we shall move straight into the law of intestacy. Okay, now without wasting much time, I want us to participate and have this class as lively as possible. It is a Friday. I don't want to keep you here for long. Some of you have plans, so I don't want to be the one who is the prophet of doom into your very good plans of Friday. So please let us have it as interactive as possible, and then we can conclude as fast as we can. All right, so the first thing is, what is a will? Somebody tell us, what do you think a will is? What is a will? What is this animal that you're calling a will? What is a will?
Unajua inakuanga rahisi kujibu, like kwangi eti vitu ngumu anauliza, but akiula anajibu
Ndanu, tuanze na wewe sasa. What is a will? Si ni rahisi vile nauliza? Sawa sawa. Ndanu, tuko na wewe. What is a will, Ndanu? Ndanu, unmute. All right, as Ndanu is thinking, can we have somebody tell me, what is a will? What is this thing called a will? A lingo penina.
Mwalimu, I can say a will is a legal declaration of a person's intention on how his property is going to be disposed of after his death.
Okay. Declaration. All right. Somebody else want to add something about wills? It's not rocket science. There's no one meaning of a definition of a will. You can define a will the way you want. Ndanu?
a will can also contain the person that the diseased, when one becomes diseased, they want to execute their will.
Ulisema maswali zangu ni rahisi. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're telling your friend there. Who is that friend of yours? Ndatuma mtu hapo wasalimie hapo nyinyi wawili. But my question is, Ndanu, if somebody asked you today, what is a will? That is the question, Ndanu. So what is a will? What will you, what if you go to the village for Christmas and your grandfather is asking you, Akili, hii will ni nini? Story will, hii will ni nini? What is a will, Ndanu? Do you want to give it another attempt?
case.
Okay, proceed.
How one disposes of their properties and assets that they own to their various dependents.
All right, that is perfect. Yes. So it's just declaration. Yes, Wamalwa, lastly.
A will is a testamentary declaration of a deceased person on how his estate will be devolved upon his death or disposed of.
Okay. That is perfect. That is perfect. So there's no right and wrong meaning of what a will is. There's no right or wrong meaning of what a will is. Are we together? That is what I'm saying. That's exactly what I am saying. So please don't complicate it. Now, why do you think someone should make a will? Now, the reason why we are asking this question is because you are going to get a question in an exam telling you that person XYZ was making a will and the friends discouraged him from making a will. Now he has come to your office and is telling you that explain to me why I should have a will. What will your answer be? What is the importance of making a will? There's no right or wrong answer, guys. Let us chorus them and then we can proceed and do other things. Please. Yes, Rafa, Nasor.
One importance is that it gives you the opportunity to dispose of property even after your death. So you get to determine how you want your property distributed.
Yes, it gives you control over your property after your death. All right, perfect. Isaiah.
It gives you an opportunity to list the properties that are available for distribution. You know, like identifying which one cannot be distributed to your survivors. These are property you jointly owned.
You want to rephrase that? I want you to rephrase it. You have a right point, but I want you to rephrase it so that it can you can. What you're saying is correct, but can you would you like to just give it another go?
No, maybe somebody can do it.
All right, Wasike Hilda.
Well, also a will enables a person to determine, like to choose a personal representative, for instance, like an executor, as in somebody who will be involved in the whole process of administering the property that they have left behind.
Yes, it gives the opportunity to pick on whoever is going to execute that and administer that. Yes, thank you very much, Robert Okiaga.
I will also eliminate disputes over the property after the death of the testator.
Yes, avoiding dispute. So by simply saying, hey, this property shall go to this person and this shall go to this person. And that is making sure that when you pass on, then your properties are there's no dispute in your estate. Yes, Wamalo.
A will helps the family of the deceased to know all the properties that the deceased had before his demise.
Yeah, it's a way of making sure that the deceased person discloses the properties before they die, so that it is easy to identify what is owned or what is forming part of the estate. Thank you very much, Penina.
Mwalimu, I'm not so sure of what I'm going to say, but I still seek your indulgence. Well, to me, I'd advise the client that the importance of making a will is that person, the maker of the will choose the people, the beneficiaries, allocate properties to which person or who. It depends. It can be someone from his immediate family, a friend, or maybe distribute his properties to organizations. Yes. I don't know if I'm
Yes, you're
on
very
the
right.
track. Okay.
You're very right. That is one of the reasons why somebody will want to make a will, so that you identify who is going to benefit. Those kids that were not cooperating with you when you're still alive, wakule nini, wakule kiburi. So it gives you the control to decide who is going to inherit from your estate. That is very well. Dorothy?
Persons outside the family can also benefit from the deceased property, e.g., friends.
Yes. Persons outside the family or the blood relatives of the deceased person can also inherit from the estate of the deceased. Is a way of making sure that not just the blood relatives inherit, but also persons that are way out of. Because if you don't give your friends and relatives your properties when you're within the will, they will not inherit under intestacy. Intestacy is only left for blood relatives. So if you want your relatives to inherit, or your friends to inherit, then you better make sure that you include them in the will. So this is an opportunity for them or for you to include your blood relatives there. Thank you very much. Yes, Dorothy?
The last one, the deceased person is able to, they have a chance of stating how they wish to be disposed of, whether they want to be buried or cremated.
Yes. All right, that is perfect. That is perfect. So direction on how the body will be disposed. All right, thank you. Omwenga, thank you.
I'm not sure with this one, but if a testator has a minor, it gives them an opportunity to choose a guardian for the minor.
Perfect, yes. It gives the testator the opportunity to pick a guardian for the minor. Yes, so if there's a minor in question and this minor is maybe we need, we'll need someone to take care of them, then this is the perfect chance for the deceased person to pick a guardian who will be taking care of the kid once they're gone. All right, Paul Waititu.
Okay, for mine it was just a question, yeah.
Okay.
So
proceed.
During intestacy, then it means if you one child, then the property is just distributed to you as the one child, or like when you say blood, is it, if you're one child, is it just distributed to you as the only child?
Yeah, we'll discuss the rules of intestacy. But a quick answer to your question is intestacy is only for blood relatives. Okay, it is only for blood relatives, and only those other relatives will only inherit if the blood relatives are not there. So the rule is very simple. We start from section 35, it gives the instances. So when you leave behind your wife and your kid, when you leave behind your wife alone, your kid alone. So it gives all those instances where the deceased person died and living there. Even in the instance where you leave no person, you leave no child or no wife or no spouse, then the law also caters for that. So those are under rules of intestacy, which is our discussion after all this. We shall look at that. But if you want to find it in the Act, it is from section 35 all the way to section 40 that provides for the rules of distributing the estate of a deceased person in all those circumstances. So yes, the simplest answer is if you want someone else who is not your blood relative to inherit from your estate, then they have to be in the will, because if you don't include them in the will, they will not inherit anything. Only blood relatives can inherit from your estate, but with the priority from your spouse and your child. So it means if you leave behind just one child and no spouse, then everything else will go to that child. If you leave behind two children, everything else will go to those two kids. So that is the law. So if you don't want that to happen, you better make a will and distribute that. If you want to give your grandmother something or your uncle or your auntie something, you can only do it under the will. If you don't do it under the will, you will not do it under intestacy, because under intestacy, the rules are very clear. Tuko sawa?
Thank you.
Okay. That is proper. That is proper. Aha. Isaiah, you have a question or something to add?
In trying to rephrase that answer, my answer, it gives the testator a chance to know which properties in the estate he can distribute and which he can't distribute.
No, it doesn't really. You know your property, so you definitely know the property. So the will does not decide for you.
But I might own a property. I might own a property with you jointly, and in the aspect, then maybe I say that if I die, my first son will take over my shares and own. But in the event he doesn't know it's jointly.
So the will doesn't decide anything. It is you to decide. When you write a will, you write a will on depending on the properties you have. So it is not, the will not help you know which properties you have. The will help you distribute them.
Okay? What I'm trying to think of is, this person has come to my office and has listed to me all the properties he have, and then I'll tell this one is jointly owned. You can't bequeath it to another person. It means once you die, this your partner is the one who takes it over.
How is the will coming in that instance? What is the role of the will there? Is the will playing any role in that scenario?
Let me rethink and come back then.
The will doesn't. Whether it is intestacy or testacy, the rule is very simple. You cannot will away or you cannot distribute anything that is under joint tenancy, whether it is intestacy or testacy. Okay, so the will not play any role there. So the will doesn't make it easy for you to know your properties. The will only help you to distribute your properties. Okay, so that is that point. Thank you very much. Any person wants to add something? Fine. So what are some of the features of a will? Features of a will. Features of a will. Somebody's microphone is on. Features of a will. When you are making a will, what do you think are some of the features of a will? So we've talked about what wills are. We've talked about why people make wills. But now let us look at now. What are some of the features of a will? What are some of the features of a will? Your hand should already be up. Features of a will. If you are told to discuss features of a will, what are some of the aspects that you're going to be discussing? Yes, Kamunyu, tuanze na wewe.
Yes, it comes to life after the death of the creator of the will.
Yes, the will only comes to life, or the will only becomes valid or kicks in after the death of the deceased. So it is only the death that can make the will valid. Okay, it is only the death. So anything that is happening before this person dies that thing does not affect the estate of the deceased person, does not affect or change anything within the estate of the deceased person until the person dies. Okay, and that is why somebody can make a will and revoke it and revoke it and revoke it and revoke it and revoke it. So the will only comes into effect after the person has died, upon the death of the deceased person. And we shall discuss that more when we get to the principles of the doctrines of gifts. Omwenga.
A will is ambulatory.
A will is ambulatory. What is the meaning of that? Yes, you're right.
It's one has testamentary freedom.
Those are two different things you say. A will is ambulatory. Yes, that is a feature of a will. But what is the meaning of a will being ambulatory? Omwenga.
It takes effect after the death of the testator.
No. Somebody wants to pick someone to help you. Pick somebody.
Dorothy Malinge.
Malinge, Dorothy.
Yes.
Proceed. Dorothy. Dorothy Malinge, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, what am I supposed to add on kindly?
Sit down. Someone else to help. I was at Omwenga. Someone else. People are not in this class. I know it's Friday. You guys are doing your things. Yes. Somebody called Ruto Jepkosgei. Yes, Jepkosgei.
I think she's trying to say that it is capable of dealing with property acquired after the date of making of the will.
Yes, that is what it means. So ambulatory means that the will can deal with properties, or is capable of dealing with properties that are acquired after the will has been made. What is an example of that? If I say all the shops that I die owning shall go to my son, and at the time I'm making the will, I have one shot. And then by the time I'm dying, I have 10 shots. All the 10 shots will go to my son, because the will is ambulatory. It takes care of the future. It can include properties that will be, acquired in the future. All the cars that I die owning, all my cars, okay, all my cars will go to this person, all my pieces of land. So it doesn't matter at the time you're making the will, how many cars did you have? Okay, what matters is how many cars do you have at the time you are dying. So the will is ambulatory. It is ambulatory. It is capable of taking care of properties that are being acquired way after the death of the deceased person, or even way after the making of the will. Okay, thank you. That is what we mean by the will being ambulatory. Dorothy Malinge, that was the question. Let's go to Paul Waititu. Give us another point. What are some of the features of a will?
I think it should have a list of the items that the testator is wanting to give out, distribute.
No. That is not a feature. That is not a feature. So the first one, you've said it is intended to apply after death, which has been said, it's ambulatory, it has been said. Jerry, Rachel?
A will can always be revoked.
A will can always be revoked. So you can make it and revoke it the same way you made it. So a will can always be revoked. That is also another important point that you need to take note of. A will can always be revoked. Yes, Ruto.
A will only operates as an expression of intentions, so it's not usually guaranteed that whatever is in the will is going to be expressed or it's going to happen.
Yes, so a will is just an expression of intention. What is the meaning of that? That a will simply expresses the intention of the deceased person. It is not cast on stone that you'll have to get the property. No, it is just an expression of intention. Okay, an expression of intention. That is what we are saying. So the deceased person is expressing the intention that they want to be, they want the properties to go to this person or the other person. So that is just an expression of intention. Are you together? YT to Paul.
Sorry, when you talk about like the list of items that are to be distributed, or when you're saying like a named executor, what are those then if they're not features?
Contents of a will are not features of a will. They're different. What is it that makes a will? You know, you can have a will. You can have a will without having the properties in it. Having a property, the list of properties, it does not make a will. That is not what makes a will. Okay, what makes a will is not a property. You can have a property, you can have a will with no property in it. You can have a will with no beneficiary in it. You can have a will with all those contents that you can think of. Okay, so those are just the contents of a will, what clauses in a will. But when it comes to features of a will, these are the general features that makes the will. If you look at a will, they are constant in all wills. The first one is that a will is always taking effect after death. Number two, a will is always intended. There is the actual part of it and the intentional part of it. So a will takes effect after death. Number two, a will is intended to take effect after death. Those are two different points. And then a will is ambulatory, which means that a will can take care of properties that are supposed to be acquired or are acquired after the making of the will. And also you have said a will is just a declaration of intention. You know, so those are some of the features. Those are features of a will. Okay, a will can always be revoked. Those are features of a will. So they're constant in all wills. But if you say that a will should have this, no, that is not a feature of a will. Okay, that is what you're saying. So for instance, what you're saying that a will should have a will have the list of properties to be distributed. You can have a list of properties to be distributed without it being a will. You can just write, these are my properties to be distributed in case I die. That is not a will, but it has. So I hope you get what I'm saying, Paul. Tuko sawa?
Yeah, tuko sawa. I get you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. So those are the features of features of a will. Now you'll get a random question telling you that this and this happened at this stage. This person was making a will. He went to the bar to drink with friends. The friends told him, "Oh, don't make a will. You are inviting your own death." And then this person comes to your office the following morning and is asking you, number one, what is a will? Number two, why should he make a will? Number three, what are some of the features of a will? So you need to understand those things clearly. They are not complicated. They're very simple. They're very direct. So please make them as direct as possible. Tuko sawa? All right, sawa sawa. Now the next thing that you need to understand is I already mentioned the two types of a will, that is the oral will and the written will. So in most instances, in all instances, a will be written or a will can be oral. Now, you know, there's a discussion about audiovisual will, somebody recording a video and everything else. Now, as far as the law is concerned currently, audiovisual wills, the videos and the audios, they're still considered as oral will. So anything that is not written is an oral will, including the video will. So we still don't have a structure within our legal system to ensure or to provide for wills generally, and that is therefore the reason why everything, including the video wills, the audiovisuals, all those are considered as oral wills. All right, so let us go to making of a valid will. Making of a valid will. So what do you think should be there for there to be a valid will? What do you think should be there for there to be a valid will? Or what is that makes a will valid? What do you need to do to have a valid will? Now, there are various things that you need to understand. The first thing is the question of testamentary freedom. Testamentary freedom. Testamentary freedom. You need to understand the question to do with testamentary freedom. Okay, that is the first one. Okay, testamentary freedom. So what is Paul, you have a question? Sorry, I see your hand is up.
No, sorry. I've tried putting it down, but nikaa imekataa.
Okay, let me help you. All right, so what is testamentary freedom? Testamentary freedom simply means that everyone can make a will. Testamentary freedom is the freedom that every person that owns a property have to dispose that property the way they want. That is testamentary freedom. Are you together? That is testamentary freedom. So make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand that. So testamentary freedom is simply the freedom that every person will have when it comes to the disposal of their property. Now, every person that owns property will have the right to dispose that property as or in a way or in a manner that they like. That is the law when it comes to testamentary freedom. Now, whether they're female or whether they're male, they have the right to proceed and distribute that estate the way they feel like. That is the testamentary freedom that is recorded under section 5 of the Law of Succession Act. Are we together? So that is testamentary freedom. Now, this testamentary freedom is going to be informing a lot of discussions. First, it will inform the way wills are written. That is the first one. It will inform the question of construction of wills. It will also inform the question of provision for dependents. Okay, provision for dependents. So that is one thing you need to understand. That is one thing you need to understand. Guys, tuko sawa? Tuko sawa?
Yes.
All right. So that is a testamentary freedom. So simply we are saying any person that has a piece of property or a property, they can distribute it the way they want. They can even throw it away. They can even give it to anyone. That is testamentary freedom. So please make sure you understand that. Thank you. Now, let us go into the question of making a valid will. Okay, making a valid will. And of course, I've already mentioned that female or male, man or woman can make a will. No person is exempted from the making of a will. Any person can make a will, so long as they have a property and so long as they are living and breathing. Okay, even children can make a will, but of course, when they get to the age of 18, they have to re-execute the will. Are we together? So that is just the rule that you need to understand. All right, now let's go deep into now. What are some of the things that you need to have for there to be a valid will? When you are investigating the validity of a will, what is the first thing you look at? The first one is called capacity. Now, capacity is divided into two. There are two things that will go into capacity. The first thing that goes into capacity is age. The age of the person making the will. The age of the person making the will. Are we together? So when you are discussing capacity, you need to go and ask yourself, the first thing is the age. Is the deceased person above the age of 18? Okay, so for there to be a valid will, the maker of the will must be an adult who is above the age of 18. I've given you the proviso, which is the exception to the rule, which provides that, however, children below the age of 18 can make a valid will. Okay, they can make a will, but provided that they will, re-execute that will after they attain the age of 18. So when you get to the age of 18, you have to re-execute the will. You have to sign it again so that it becomes valid. So that is the first one, the question of age above 18, but people that are below the age of 18 can sign the will, but that will only be valid once it is re-executed upon attaining the age of 18. Are we together? That is the first limb of capacity. The second limb of capacity is mental capacity. Now, for you to make a valid will, you must be, okay? You must be having a stable mental health. Let me call it that. So you must be having a stable mental health. So you must be of sound mind. So a person of unsound mind cannot make a will, okay? A person of unsound mind cannot make a will. What are the exceptions of that rule? So the rule is very simple. For you to make a will, you need to be a person of sound mind. But if you are a person of unsound mind, then you will not make the will. However, you can make the will only during your lucid moments. Now, how do you determine whether somebody is of sound mind? The case of Banks versus Goodfellow. That is the case that defines the question of mental capacity. Banks versus Goodfellow. So there are different principles that were set under Banks versus Goodfellow in a bid to explain what a person of sound mind looks like. So what do you think you should look at for you, or before you can conclude that a person is of sound mind? Weka mikono juu kila mtu. Banks versus Goodfellow. This is one of the few cases you will interact with. Let's start with, yes, I want somebody that has not spoken today. Evelyn James, we start with you.
Maybe if the person is able to recall their dependents, or rather the property that they have.
Those are 2 points. All right. So let us explain that. So the first thing is a recollection of your properties. A recollection of your properties. Now the question is, did the deceased person, did the maker of the will recollect all his properties as he was making the will? If there's evidence that the deceased person forgot some properties and did not include them in the will, then that is a prima facie evidence that this person was not of sound mind, because he could not recollect all his properties. Now, guys, that is very important, but you need to be very cautious when it comes to that point. Why? if you have 10 pieces of land, not all of them should be in the will. Okay, not all of them must be in the will. You can decide that out of these 10, you will make a will and just have 5 of them. So if you leave out 5 intentionally, it doesn't mean that you are of unsound mind. Okay. Now, leaving out some properties is a red flag towards being of unsound mind. But that does not mean conclusively that the person was of sound mind. What matters is, why did you leave them out? Did you leave them out because you forgot that you had them, or you left them intentionally? So if the person left the properties out of the will because he forgot that those properties belong to him, then that will is invalid because the person is of unsound mind. So if you can't recall all your properties, you forgot some of them, then that is a red flag, and therefore we shall say you don't have the mental capacity. However, if you left the properties just because you wanted to leave them, then that is not an issue. Okay, that is not an issue, and therefore you are still of sound mind. That is the first point. Number 2 is a recollection of your beneficiaries. You need to know who is your beneficiary. So if the deceased person in the will cannot recall all his beneficiaries, the deceased person is unable to recollect all his children, wife or wives, then that is a clear evidence that the deceased person is of unsound mind. Okay? Now remember again, the fact that your child is not in the will doesn't mean you forgot about him. It only means you left him out because you didn't want him to inherit. Okay? So somebody being left out of the will doesn't mean that the deceased person failed to recall. No. It only means that maybe he failed or he was doing it intentionally. Now, if he's doing it intentionally, then that will is not invalid. But if evidence is provided that this person left behind the wife or the daughter from the will because he forgot whether they were children, whether they were his children or his spouses, then that becomes a problem. And you've seen such cases where somebody bequeathed something to someone because they thought that person was their wife or was their kid. So in that's a different case. So a property being left out of the will doesn't mean the deceased person forgot. You have to look more and find out whether he forgot or he left it intentionally. If he forgot, that is unsound mind. The next one is also, a beneficiary. A beneficiary being left out of the will doesn't mean the deceased person forgot or failed to recall. To recall. Are we together? So that is what you're saying. So please make sure that that is clear. What else do we have under Banks versus Goodfellow? Yes, we know Eric.
Well, he must also understand the gravity of what is making, that is making a will, and what comes with making a will. That understanding must be very clear.
Come again.
He must also understand the gravity of him making the will, the importance of what is doing in the will as he makes the will.
All right. So the question of understanding the seriousness of making a will. By the time this person was making a will, did he understand that he was making a will? Was he able to understand that whatever he was making was a will? Okay. Did he understand the seriousness of the business of making that will? If evidence is provided that this person could not understand that he was making a will, maybe thought he was just joking, then that becomes a problem. And therefore, we need to nullify that will because the deceased person was not in his right mental status. So understanding the seriousness of the business. Somebody else, what again was in Banks versus Goodfellow? Wamalo?
A trial, insane delusion.
Explain yourself.
If the person making the will was believing in something that no normal human being could believe in.
Keep explaining yourself.
For example, if this person, if this person thinks that maybe the son wants to kill him.
That is, I mean, I'm getting what you're saying. I'm getting exactly what you're saying. What I'm just asking is, what is make it put it in a sentence form. If you just say insane delusions, I'll be wondering whether what you mean by that.
Insane delusion. If a person believes in something that a normal human being cannot believe in, and I'm going to use an example. For example, if you're assisting the person to take medication and the person believes that you want to kill him.
That is, I get all that, but the question is, now make it, use that to answer the question. That is what I'm saying. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying.
No, I'm stuck. Someone can help me, please.
Somebody?
Hello, if I may, maybe that speaks to freedom from disorder of the mind.
What do you mean freedom of disorder from the mind? What do you huh?
I can also try. From the example that we were given by Florence, and then I'll conclude that that person is not sane, is not of sane mind.
I get all what you're saying, guys. I get what you're saying. Exactly, I get what you're saying. What I'm asking is, now put it in a sentence, and now tell us, according to Banks versus Goodfellow, what are the tests of ensuring or of identifying whether somebody is of sound or unsound mind? That's what I'm saying. Guys, come on.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
From what they have been trying to say, I think they're trying to say the person should be free from any delusion of the mind that will affect that disposition to the beneficiaries.
Yes, free from insane delusions. Insane delusions is when you believe in something that somebody cannot believe in. All right, that is insane delusion. Anything else that so give us, somebody explain to us now how insane delusions works, or can give us an example so that everybody can understand. Put up your hand. Yes, Omwenga.
A person failing to bequeath someone because they believe that that someone is trying to harm them. And now, for instance, they see the person chasing them in their dreams, wanting to kill them. So they believe that the person is out there to harm them.
Yes. That is an insane delusion. When somebody dreams that somebody is trying to kill them, and because of that, they will not bequeath anything to that person because they think that person is trying to kill them. So that is an insane delusion. So this person should be, okay, free from insane delusions. Okay. All right, Kamunyu.
Jackson, I think I have a different opinion. The court found that not necessarily a mental capacity can be directly, basically, the capacity to make the will is not directly linked to a mental disorder, as long as the testator's capacity to understand the nature of the will, then they are okay.
That is exactly what I've already explained. I've already explained that you could be mentally unstable, but we have something we are calling the lucid moments. Lucid moments means that you are mentally unstable, but at that specific moment, you are able to understand what you're doing. Okay? If you've seen persons of unsound mind, sometimes they're just normal people. Okay? Sometimes they are doing crazy things, but sometimes they're just normal people. So during the time that they're doing they're doing those crazy things, they are of unsound mind. They can't make a will. But when they settle down, then they become they become lucid, and therefore they can make a will. So that is what I said, lucid moments. When this person is in their lucid moments, they can make a will. Are we together? Okay. Somebody saying something? All right. So that is mental. That is capacity. That is mental capacity. So for mental capacity, you are looking at the past Banks versus Goodfellow, which develops the principles that we mentioned, that they must understand first the business they are in, the business of making a will. They need to understand the seriousness of making a will. Once they do that, then they must recall all their assets, they must recall all the beneficiaries, and then they must be free from insane delusions. But also you need to understand that there's a proviso to that general rule. The same way we said, even for age, there's a proviso that even a kid can make a will, but they have to re-execute it when they turn the age of 18. Even when it comes to persons of unsound mind, they can make that will when they become lucid. Okay, sawa. So that is the question of capacity. Now the next one is the question to do with the formal requirements. Formal requirements. Okay. What are the formal requirements of making a will? Put your hand up. Formal requirements, someone? Let's start with Eric Owino.
So in both written and oral will, there must be two competent witnesses to witness.
We are losing you. We are losing you, Council. We are losing you. Your network, I
Hello,
think.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes, in both oral and written wills, there must be two competent witnesses to the wills.
All right. Two competent, two witnesses to the will. Before you get there, before you get to the question of witnesses. Yes, Perina.
Yes, Mwalimu. I believe one of the formal requirements is that of a will should be, or for example, a written will should be signed by the maker of the will.
So the will must be executed by the maker. That is the first one, the execution by the maker. Omwenga.
Now we come to attestation of two competent witnesses.
Attestation by two competent witnesses. Someone wants to add something? Omalwa?
A will should be executed by the testator in the presence of two witnesses, and if the testator executes it in the absence of two witnesses, then he must send an acknowledgement that the signature appearing on the will, it is his, and the testators must, the witnesses must sign the will in the presence of the testator.
All right. All right. Anyone wants to add something?
If I may.
Yes.
Can we also say the voluntariness of writing the will? It should be done voluntarily, without coercion.
That is the next one.
Yeah.
That is the next point. So let us go to section 11, guys. Section 11 of the the Law of Succession Act. That is where we are. Section 11 of the Law of Succession Act. That is where we are. So, guys, whenever you get a will, when you get a will before you, and you are being told to discuss the validity of Mr. XYZ's will, then you need to do so under the limbs that we are discussing. The first one is the question of capacity. You first have to discuss capacity, that, hey, the person is above the age of 18 and the person is of sound mind. The next thing is now the formal requirements of making a valid will. Now, for there to be a valid written will, for instance, this is now when it comes to formalities, now we're talking about written wills. Now, the first thing is that the will must be executed. The will must be executed by the person that makes the will. So the testator must execute the will. The testator is the person that makes the will, and he must execute the will. Okay? He must execute the will. Now, how is the will executed? The will is executed by either inserting your mark, okay, your signature, or your thumbprint. Okay? Your mark, your signature, or your thumbprint on the document. Okay? And that must be placed in a manner to suggest that that document was being executed. Okay? So if you're going to sign the will, don't sign in the middle of the words, in the middle of the paragraphs. You sign at the very end. Okay? So the will must be executed by the testator. Okay? By the testator, by either inserting their mark, the signature, or the thumbprint in a place or in a manner to suggest the execution. Okay? That is the first one. The second one is that if the testator is not able to sign the will himself, if the testator is not able to sign the will himself, then the person that is signing the will on behalf of the testator must do so under two conditions. The first condition is they must do so under the direction of the testator. They must do so under the direction of the testator. So the testator must direct them that I want you to sign the will on my behalf. That is the first one. The second one, they must do so before the testator. The will must be signed before the testator. Okay, so if you are signing on behalf of your husband, you sign under his direction and before him. You don't go and sign at home and then bring it later, or they send you through the email, you photocopy and then you sign. No, you sign the will before the testator and under his direction. That is the first one. The second one is the question of attestation. The question of attestation. Are you together? The question of attestation. Now, a will must be attested by at least two competent witnesses. Two competent witnesses. Who is a competent witness? A competent witness is a witness that is above the age of 18 and is not of unsound mind. So even the witnesses are not supposed to be of unsound mind. Are you together? The witnesses must also be of sound mind. So that is the competence of witnesses. Okay, so it must be signed before two witnesses that are competent. Okay, now these witnesses don't have to attest all of them at the same time. What am I saying? So if Mr. X is signing his will, he must sign before two witnesses. Okay, the two witnesses must see him signing. These two witnesses must see him signing. However, when these two witnesses are signing themselves, the other witness doesn't have to be there. There's attestation. When you're attesting, you are there. You stand there, you see somebody signing. And then after you see them signing, you will sign later after they have signed. So the attestation must happen. I mean, the two witnesses must be there and they must see the testator signing. Are you together? They must see the testator signing. And then after that, then the two of them can sign. But now if these witnesses are not before the testator, then the testator must send an acknowledgement of his signature to them for them to sign. So acknowledgement simply means you sign somewhere, you sign the will, and then you sign on a piece of paper to acknowledge that this is my signature that I've appended on the will. So if they are not there or one of them is not there for their signature, then you have to send an acknowledgement to them. So that is the rule of attestation. So you have to attest, you have to have the two witnesses who are competent, and competence means above the age of 18 and not of unsound mind. So that is the formal requirement of making a valid will. We shall move to section 13 and explain something. Up to there, any person with a question? Any person with a question? No one. Now let us go to what we are calling section 13. Guys, are we together?
Yes, we are, Madam.
Yeah.
We are together.
All right, amazing. Now, let us talk about section 13. Now, section 13 is now an instance where these two competent witnesses have also signed, are also beneficiaries. So if the witness are also beneficiaries, then there is something called independence that will be lacking. So if a witness signs the will, that witness will still be competent and the will will still be validly attested to, but the witness will not be independent. And an independent witness cannot inherit from, an independent witness cannot inherit from the will. So for you to be deemed as an independent witness, you should not be inheriting anything from the will. So the fact that you are inheriting anything from the will doesn't make you independent. So the fact that something was given to you makes you not to be independent. So what you're saying is if a witness signs the will and the same witness is a beneficiary, then that witness becomes competent but not independent. Now, in that instance, we need to get a replacement, okay? A replacement for the an independent witness. We need to get another independent witness. So what am I saying? If you have Penina and Alan sign the will as witnesses, so long as they're above the age of 18 and they are of sound mind, I mean, they're of sound mind, then that will is perfectly attested to. The will is perfectly attested to. Are we together? The will is perfectly attested to. However, if Alan is a beneficiary as well, then the gift that is given to Alan in that will shall fail unless we get a replacement for Alan. It means we need to get another witness who is competent and independent. So that will have 3 witnesses. 2 are competent and independent, and 1 is competent but not independent. So if 2 of them are beneficiaries, then we need 2 more independent. So the number of additional witnesses you're going to get depends on how many witnesses have signed the will as beneficiaries. Guys, is that making sense? And the case is the case of Rebravida. That is the case. So that is the question of witnesses attesting the will if they are beneficiaries. If you're a beneficiary, you should not be a witness. But if you're a witness, we must have additional competent and independent witness. Tuko sawa? Swali? Yes. Rachel?
What is the consequence of having a witness who is not independent without the third witness to attest to? There are only 2 attesting witnesses and they are also beneficiary.
That is exactly what I've just said. I've said the gift given to them will fail. The gift shall fail. So whatever was given to Alan will not go to Alan, but the will still be valid, but Alan will not get what is given to him in the will unless we can find an additional witness. So if you don't find an additional witness, whatever was given to Alan will fail and will go to intestacy. So, are we together?
Excuse.
Yes.
Yes, Banafa?
When it comes to section 13, will it also apply in oral wills, or with oral wills, you don't need an independent witness, irrespective of the fact that the witnesses you have are also beneficiaries? Is that an exception to section 13?
We don't have attestation in oral wills. Oral wills, we just have witnesses that are just listening because there's nothing to be signed in section 13. So there's no actual attestation. So that rule does not apply to when it comes to section 13. I mean the oral will. So oral wills, so long as there are 2 witnesses, it doesn't mean the aspect of independence is only required when it comes to written wills. Tuko sawa?
Yes.
All right. Somebody else with a question?
Sorry, can you please repeat the case that you had mentioned?
Rebravda. Somebody has already typed in the chat. All right. Are we together up to that point?
Yes.
We are together?
Yeah.
Yes,
All
we are
right.
together.
All right. All right, so I want us to go now to what we call the vitiating factors. Vitiating factors. Okay. Now, vitiating factors are those things that will make a will to fail, even though the will has been properly signed, properly dated, properly attested, and everything else. They vitiate the validity of the will. Vitiating factors. Now, somebody to list for us. Maybe one person list for us the vitiating factors that we have. These things, they will vitiate the validity of a will. Number one. Yes, Muigai Paris.
Fraud.
Fraud, yes. Next. Yes, Omondi Rachel.
Coercion.
Coercion, Do you influence? Yes, Omwenga.
Mistake.
Mistake. Omalwa.
Forgery.
Forgery. Gloria.
Misrepresentation.
Miss what?
Misrepresentation. Oh my God, I'm chewing my tongue. So please help me.
I wanted to say that thing very well. Miss Angoa.
Kamba mwingi. Misrepresentation.
Pick someone to help you say that word. Just pick someone who is from Cumberland.
Hilda.
Hilda Wasiki. Miss?
Misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation. Thank you. All right, now let's discuss them independently. So the first one is the question of certainty. Certainty. Now, what are vitiating factors, guys? The will can meet all the tests. Okay? The will can meet all the tests. I want to understand that the will can meet all the formal requirements and even the what you're calling the capacity requirement. But certain factors will make that will to fail. The first one is certainty. Okay. Now, if the will or the gift is not certain, okay, if the gift is not certain, that gift or the will fail. What do I mean? So if the gift in a will is saying that my car will go to my son, and the deceased person had 2 sons and had 3 cars, that gift is uncertain. It is uncertain because we cannot tell which car and which son. So if the gift is not certain, and certain we simply means for us to know whether it is certain, we should be able to pinpoint a specific gift to a specific person. Okay? A specific gift to a specific person. So if we are not able to tell who gets what, then that is uncertain gift or uncertain will. So it can be just one line of the will, or it can be the entire will being uncertain. So if the entire will is uncertain, that will shall fail for uncertainty. Okay, uncertainty. And then if just one line or one gift is uncertain, then that gift shall fail and the rest of the gifts will pass. That is the question of uncertainty. The next one is what you're calling undue influence. Undue influence, or what you're calling coercion. Okay, undue influence or coercion. Now, if there's evidence that this person made the will or made a gift because there was undue influence, Wingrove versus Wingrove, okay? If there's evidence that this person, this gift or this will was made as a result of undue influence, then that will shall fail, okay? What is undue influence? Undue influence is a circumstance where you are taking out the freedom or the discretion of the testator. If you force the testator to give you whatever they gave you, if you force the testator to make a will in your favor, then that in itself becomes a victim of undue influence and coercion, and that shall be struck out because it is uncertain. However, remember in that case of Wingrove versus Wingrove, what did the court say? The court said that if a young man, okay, if a young man is held captive by a harlot and make a will entirely to the benefit of that harlot, then that will shall pass. That will shall pass, and it is not undue, because the court said there's a difference between persuasion and undue influence. So for instance, if your uncle or your friend goes to Sabina Joy, and if you know what Sabina Joy is, you need to seek Christ. You need to seek Jesus Christ. Tomorrow is a weekend. And for those who are going to church, go to church and repent for all your sins. So if you know what Sabina Joy is or where it is, the kingdom of heaven, utaionea tu kwa view sasa. So if your friend goes to Sabina Joy and then comes out of there and makes a will in favor of a person that they met at Sabina Joy, then that will shall pass. Even if they have bequeathed everything to this person, the will shall pass. This person had 2 wives and 10 children, and he has left nothing to the kids. That will shall still pass. Okay? That will shall pass. Why? Because you have been persuaded. The mode that this person used to persuade you at that place you went to doesn't matter, so long as you were persuaded. So persuasion, okay? Persuasion is not illegal. Persuasion is not illegal, okay? What is illegal is undue influence, okay? Undue influence is pressure and forcing the deceased person to write a will in your favor. That also includes brainwashing, okay? Brainwashing. Now, this is where I also need to tread very carefully. You know, this is a very sensitive thing. A very, very sensitive thing, because you've seen this even with religious leaders in church. Somebody just brainwashes everyone. Okay? Some things don't work, guys. Christians, those theatrics are just with Christians. Don't buy those funny things. Okay? Your church pastor is selling water, selling handkerchief, and you're buying. Don't be brainwashed So you find questions in an exam where you're being told that this person made a will bequeathing everything to his pastor. Why? Because the pastor told him that when he goes to heaven, he will find what in heaven, and he will be given how many virgins and a house there, or he will sit in the right hand side of Jesus Christ. And then he bequeathed everything to this person. That is brainwashing. Okay? That is brainwashing. Now, don't be brainwashed. The Bible says, and now I'm preaching because I'm also a pastor. I'm also a pastor in my other life. You know, worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. There's no miracle that is being done in those things you're saying. Okay? Don't fall victim. And most of them are just, again, our female colleagues. Majority of them, in fact, it is an established principle right now. It is a law that if you want to eat a woman's money, fungua kanisa. Kama unataka kula pesa ya mwanamke, fungua kanisa. That is the easiest way. So our female colleagues, please don't get cheated. People don't buy the kingdom of heaven. I don't know whether that is the same for our female colleagues, Muslims and the Hindus. I don't know. And that church from Mount Kenya, Akorino, I don't know whether they have the same. But don't be brainwashed. If you're a Christian, read the Bible. If you are Muslim, the Quran. If you are Hindu, whatever they read. If you're a Corino, I don't know what do we have a Corinos here? What do you guys read? Is it the Bible? The same Bible? A Corinos. We don't have a Corinos represented here. All right. So read the Bible and don't be cheated. So guys, religion, cultural beliefs, politics. Those are the key avenues of brainwashing. And those are the key examples you'll find most so in your exams, where the examiner is trying to give you some kind of brainwashing. You'll be told this person was promised something politically. Okay, they were told that if you do this, if you sell all your properties and you give this to this person, you know, they will do something for you. That is undue influence. Okay, you will be told that this sickness that you have, if you write your will and you give everything to this witch doctor, this sickness will not go to your whatever. And then that is brainwashing at the same time. 2 years ago, 3 years ago actually, you saw there's a case in court where the family of a young lady had gone to court to challenge everything that was given to the preacher. Again, that is brainwashing. So don't get brainwashed. So when you see such instances, you have to confirm, by the time this person was bequeathing the pastor everything, was he having an option? If there was no option given to him, then that is brainwashing and that is undue influence. If this person had a gun to their head, that is undue influence. If this person was pressurized, was forced into making the will, that is undue influence, and that will shall not fail, regardless of the fact that it is signed, it is executed, attested properly. Guys, tuko sawa? Swali? Yes, Mutinda Redemptor.
Good evening. My question is, where is the line between coercion and persuasion? Because
the option.
the person that say that you are persuaded, not coerced.
You know what happens to Sabina Joy? Do you have an idea what happens there?
No.
Okay. So what the court said in that case of Wingrove versus Wingrove is the same thing, that if a young man meets a harlot, you go with that harlot and you have a good time, and based on that good time that you had, you are now persuaded to make a will in the benefit of that harlot. Those are the words of the court. Those are not my words. Those are the words Wingrove versus Wingrove. You can read it. It's a verbatim quotation. Then that will be valid. Okay. Now the question is, was there an option given to this person by the time they're making this will? If the option was not there, then you will conclude that is undue influence. But if there was an option, if you keep reminding him, please make a will in my favor, please, I beg you, please, that is persuasion. Okay. But if you tell them, if you don't make a will in my favor, you're going to die, or when you go to heaven, you're going to hell. That is pressure. Okay, that is pressure, and due to that, you take out the freedom, you take out the discretion. This person is placed in a position where he's looking at his life of going to hell, and is earthly belonging and saying, "Fine, take everything. I don't want to go to hell." So if you don't leave this person with a choice, then that is undue influence. But if you leave them with a choice, they can either make in your favor or not make in your favor. That is not undue influence. So it is a choice. Do they have the discretion to do otherwise? If you put a gun to their head, they don't have a choice. Okay, so that is how you draw the line. So read Wingrove versus Wingrove is a very interesting discussion. And also remember that, like I've said, if you make a will, let's say, and give everything to a dog, that will still be valid, regardless of the fact that you've not given your family anything. Okay? Why? Because of Section 5. You have the testamentary freedom to give your things the way you want. Okay? So if your families just sit back and relax, they will not get anything. Mutinda, Redemptor?
Thank you. I understand that. My other question is, let's say you don't give your property to maybe a son or a daughter, or like your child or your wife. Do you need to give a reason why you have not done?
You don't. You don't need to give a reason. You don't need to give a reason for not providing for your wife. You don't need to give a reason for that. But you can give a reason if you want.
If they go to court after you are dead, yeah? If they go to court, can they object and say, I wasn't given anything and I didn't do anything? I don't know.
Yes.
What are their, what can they do something that will make the construction of the will be altered or something like that?
Now, this is what happens. Okay? If I make my will and give everything to let's say to charity, and I leave my 2 wives and many children languishing in poverty, it is upon them to go to court. So if they go to court, then the court will look at what is provided for under section. Remember, we have 26. 26 is what talks about provision for dependents that are left with nothing. So if you're left with nothing and you're a dependent, you are allowed to go to court under section 26. You make an application and under section 26 and say, hey, I am a dependent. This person left me with nothing, or he left us with nothing. When the court receives that application, the court will look at the factors listed under section 28, which are, number 1, why did the deceased person leave you behind? Because the court must be very curious. This person was a rich man and he has left his family with nothing. Why? And that is where they will come and look at your relationship with the testator. And you'll find that if you are the wife of the testator, then maybe evidence is there that you used to beat your husband. You know, every time your husband comes from work, kichapo. Okay? You used to deny your husband food. Okay? So the court is allowed to review your relationship with the testator. How did you relate with the testator when you are alive? If you are the child of the testator, maybe you're the son of the testator, you are an errant child. You are not doing as the testator was requiring you to do. You are sent to school. You squandered the school fees. You started doing drugs. You started insulting the testator. So the court will look at the reasons why the testator left you behind. Number two, the court will look at, do you have any means of survival? If you don't have any means of survival, then of course, so it is a case-to-case basis. It is a case-to-case basis. Okay? And then of course, the court will also look at, did the testator have anything? Maybe the testator didn't have anything. So the court looks at whether the testator had something. And that is when the court will make an order under 27. If the court agrees with you, because you're a dependent, the court will say, fine, let us give you something, a lump sum. Let us give you something. So the court will make an order that to be given something. But you have to convince the court based on the factors that are listed under section 28. That is what the law considers. That is what the court considers. Tuko sawa?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So the next one is mistake. If a will is made out of mistake, if there's evidence that there's mistake on the will, that a will is made as a result of a mistake, then that will shall be struck out because it is an invalid will. So mistake nullifies the will. That is clear. We have forgery. If this will was forged, then that will be nullified. Okay? We have fraud. If this will was made out of a fraudulent action, then that will shall be nullified. And then we have what we're calling suspicious circumstances. A suspicious circumstance is an instance where the maker of the will has given himself a substantial portion of the estate. So if the advocate was the one drafting this will, the advocate has given himself maybe 50% of the entire estate. That is suspicious. Okay, it is a suspicious circumstance, and the will shall fail based on that alone, based on the fact that the person who drafted the will gave himself the majority of the estate. That in itself is a red flag, and the court shall nullify the will. Suspicious circumstance. That relates only to the person that made the will, the person that was writing the will. So when there's a suspicious circumstance, there is no saving the will. The will cannot be saved. The fact that you are the person who made the will and you have, 30% of the entire estate, that is suspicious. It means you did not do something right. Something is missing. Okay, that is what we're calling suspicious circumstance. And then lastly, we have knowledge and approval. Knowledge and approval relates to the testator. When the testator signed this will, did he know the contents of the will? If there's evidence that this person didn't know what was written in the will, and most so when an advocate drafts a will, it is required that this advocate must go. You as an advocate, you must go. Okay? Where must you go to? You must go to the testator and read the will to the testator. And then the testator will confirm. Okay? The testator will confirm. So if you don't read the will back to the testator, then whatever you've written there is just your own things. And therefore, the court will strike it out. The court will strike it out and the court will say, no, no, no. There's no knowledge and approval from the testator. Are we together? That is what we are talking about. So those are vitiating factors, guys. So we talk about certainty, mistake, undue influence, fraud, forgery, misrepresentation, and then suspicious circumstance, and then knowledge and approval. So guys, you have to look for those things. The first thing you look for is capacity, age and mental capacity. Tick. The next thing you're going to look for, formal requirements of writing that will. Executed, attested, tick, tick. The next thing you're going to look for is the vitiating factors. Is there mistake? Is there fraud? Is there forgery? Is there certainty? Is there knowledge and approval? Is there forgery? Is there any suspicious circumstance? And then you tick. Once you give the last tick, then you can conclude that that will is valid or that will is not valid. Guys, are we together? Questions? Yes, Owino Alphonse.
Yes, I had a question on the last bit, that is on knowledge and approval. I wanted to inquire, because for instance, the validity of this will come into effect after the death of the testator. That is after the death of the testator. That is when now we'll be looking at whether this will was, for example, sufficiently attested. It had all those factors. So how will we then know, being that the testator will be dead, that there was knowledge and approval?
Evidence. Evidence will always come. Evidence will always come. Someone will always come with evidence. Maybe the day you are claiming that will was signed, the testator was out with a wife on a vacation. So there's no way you could have signed the will. Or by the time you brought the testator the will, you as the advocate who drafted it, by the time you brought it to be signed, there is evidence that clear people who are there saw the testator signing and not even reading. Okay? So the question will always tell you that there's no knowledge and approval. The question will always tell you that there's no knowledge and approval. So the knowledge and approval comes from the fact that the testator saw, he read, he signed. Okay? So if there's any evidence to the contrary, that is the work of the examiner. The examiner will give you that evidence. Okay? The examiner will bring that evidence to you. Uko sawa? All right.
Yes, sir.
That is clear. Let's talk about oral wills quickly, guys. Now, oral wills are very clear. These are wills that are made orally, and it includes, for purposes of the lack of the gap in our legal system, it includes even the video wills. Okay, the video wills. So the video wills, the audio visuals, but under section 70 from 77 of the Evidence Act, in terms of production of video evidence, you need the certificate of originality. That is one of the things you will be requiring when you are approving or when you're proving the oral will, which is an audiovisual. So you will need that because that is a requirement under the law, under section, under the sections of the Evidence Act, production of documentary evidence, certificate of originality. That is okay. Now, oral wills, and I've said oral wills is anything that is a will that is not written or that does not meet the test under section 11. So number one, it is oral, said. Number two, it was said and translated into paper. Said and somebody signed. It was said and somebody signed. Or said and somebody wrote down. Wambuigi? What is the name of that case? Wambuigi Konyo. Re-estate of Rufus. Is it Rufus or Rufus Nyeve? Those are the two instances where the testator said his wishes in Kikuyu and the person translated in a paper. That is still an oral will. And then, of course, the audio visuals and the video wills, that will form part of oral wills. Now, what is the validity of the oral will? What is the validity of the oral will? Let us talk about validity of oral wills. Number two is the validity of oral wills. So first you have said what oral wills are and what they include. Number two is the validity of oral wills. Number one, the oral wills must be made before two competent witnesses, at least two competent witnesses. That is number one. Number two, the oral wills. Once an oral will has been made, the testator must die. Okay, must die within a period of 3 months. Within a period of 3 months. Now, why must it be 3 months? It is 3 months because of the elements of forgetting. We need to eliminate chances of forgetting. We need to eliminate chances of forgetting. So the law assumes that a human brain will start forgetting things after 3 months. So the testator must die within 3 months so that the witnesses don't forget what they were told. Okay? However, there's an exception to that rule, which gives us what you're calling the privileged wills. Now, what is a privileged will? Am I too fast, guys?
No. No, you're okay.
No, mwalimu.
Am I slow?
You're fine.
All right. Yes, ask any question? All right. Fair enough. So privilege will. So what is a privileged will, and what is the privilege there? Why do we call it a privileged will, and what is its privilege? Now the privilege is only with regard to the 3 months period. So it is a 3 months period that brings the privilege. So privileged wills, the testator doesn't have to die within 3 months. It can die even 10 years, after 10 years, okay? Because it is a privileged will. Now, who can make a privileged will? Okay, who can make a privileged will? Number one, the members of the armed forces. The members of the armed forces are members of the armed forces. Number two, members of the merchant marine are members of the merchant marine. Members of the merchant marine. Okay. Number three, the staff of the merchant marine and the staff of the armed forces. Are we together? So those are. I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying. Those are the people that have the privilege. Okay, those are the people that have the privilege to make. Okay, to make the privilege wills. Okay, so members of the armed forces. Okay, members of the armed forces. So the first one is, of course, some of you don't know. It's okay not to know. Some of you don't know who is a member of the armed force. Who is a member of the armed forces? Who falls within the armed force? So there are only 3 people that will form part of the armed forces. The first one is the Kenya Army, the Kenya Air Force, and the Kenya Navy. Okay, the Kenya Navy. Okay, that is members of the armed forces. GSU, Kanjo, APs, those are not members of the armed forces. Okay, and you understand that armed forces are not, they don't have jurisdiction really in Kenya. They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to have any jurisdiction within the borders of the country because their work primarily is to defend the borders. Okay, and that is why for there to be a deployment of the armed forces within the borders of the country, the parliament must approve. Anytime they're being deployed, the parliament must approve because those are the armed forces. So the Kenya Air Force, the Kenya Army, and the Kenya Navy and their staff. Number two, members of the merchant marine. Okay, who is a member of the merchant marine? Okay, so a merchant, you know the merchant, who a merchant is, a trader. So merchant marine is these people that are involved in the transportation of goods and people across the high seas. That is a member, that is a merchant marine. So if you're working on a vessel that is registered in Kenya, for instance, then you are a member of the merchant. But of course, we don't have ships registered in Kenya. We don't have Kenyan ships like that. And I've already mentioned why. We don't have Kenyan ships like that. I don't think whether there's even one single ship that is registered in Kenya. There's none. And the reason is because of taxation. The reason is taxation, and the reason is also employment. So most ships in Africa, and actually not even just Africa, even in the world, the most number of ships, they're flying the Liberian flag. So they're registered in Liberia because Liberia is giving a lot of benefits to people that register the ships in Liberia. So they will be docking at Mombasa, yes, but they're not Kenyan ships. Also, Ethiopia is doing well. I think there are quite a few registered in Ethiopia. But the moment you are involved in the business of transporting people and goods, you know there's a large quantity of goods being transported via sea, and therefore you become a member of the merchant marine. So while you're at the sea, you get the privilege of making an oral will, because you can be at the high seas for a very long time. You could even travel for a whole year or more than 6 months while just still on the high seas without docking anywhere. And that is the reason you can leave Kenya today and to come back in 1 year or 2 years, depending on how your vessel works. So because of that, we need to give you the break of the 3 months period. Now that is the who, the when. Okay. Now the when is when they are in active service. Now for the armed forces, when they are in active service. For the members of the merchant marine, when they're actually on the high seas. If you're a member of the merchant marine and you're at home, it doesn't apply. Okay. So when they're in active service. Now active service starts from the time you receive the instructions of deployment until when your deployment lasts. So if you receive information today that you're being deployed, then from that moment, you are in active service until the last day of your deployment. Okay? So being a member of the merchant marine or the armed forces doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to make a privilege will. It must be made during a period of active service. So if you're just resting there in Langata or Kawa, then you don't claim to be making a privilege will. It only acts when you're in active service. When you're already deployed, then it becomes not a child's play. So you have to be given that privilege. So that is what you're calling. So a member of the merchant marine or armed forces, when they're in active service, they're exempted from the 3 months rule, and therefore they can make a will, and that oral will can exist even for 1 year. Okay, even for 2 years. They don't have a limit. Okay, so that is the privilege will. The last thing is the proof of oral wills. How do we prove oral wills? Now, the proof of oral wills is very simple. The 2 witnesses must come and testify. The 2 witnesses, because remember, it must be made before at least 2 competent witnesses. So the 2 witnesses must come and testify. Now, if these 2 witnesses say different things, then that will shall fail unless you can get a 3rd witness to corroborate any of the 2 witnesses. I hope you get to understand that. So if person A, there are 2 witnesses, person A is saying a different thing from person B, because remember, the entirety of this oral will it entirely depends on the testimony of the 2 witnesses, because it is not written anywhere. It is what they were told. So if the 2 of them come and start giving different stories, then that means that there's no oral will, unless we can get a 3rd person to corroborate. Okay, to corroborate the story of either of the witnesses. Okay, and even if that 3rd person comes and, if that 3rd person comes and starts saying his own things also, the will shall fail. So the validity of this oral wills or the proof of oral wills depends on the testimony of the 2 witnesses. If they're not agreeing, then the 3rd witness shall be brought to corroborate either of the sides. Okay, that is how we prove oral wills. That is the question of proof of oral wills and the proof of written wills. So we're done with what wills are. We're done with the types of wills. We're done with the features and importance of making a will. And we're done with the question of making a valid will. The question of capacity, the formality requirements under Section 11, and the vitiating factors, which we have mentioned. We have also talked about the oral wills and how you can prove an oral will and the privileged will. So make sure you understand those nuances. When it comes to privileged wills, understand who and when. Who can make a privileged will and when can they make it? It is a two-pronged process. Who? Members of the Merchant Marine and members of the armed forces. Okay, I've said members of the armed forces to Kona, Air Force, Army, and Navy. Members of the Merchant Marine are those ship captains and people that work on the ship, so long as they're on the high seas, the transportation of people and people and goods across the continent or across the high seas. That is what we are calling. The Merchant Marine. So when they're in active service. Proof of oral wills, it must be based on the testimony of the two witnesses. And if they are contradicting each other, then we bring in a third witness, or the will shall fail. That closes the discussion of making of wills. Now the next thing is the question of revocation of wills, but it's already time. So we can take questions and then we can do what we can do, or we can postpone. Do you want us to do it now or postpone it?
Do it now.
Someone is saying postpone. All right, so let's take questions and then we can resume next week to talk about the remaining part of testacy, and then we can start intestacy. There's not much. Probate is very easy. We don't need a lot of classes for this. We'll be done very soon, and then we'll start the question of past papers and drafting of whatever we need to draft. Yes, we start with Alingo Penina.
Yes, Mwalimu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is with regard to Section 12 of the Law of Succession Act, incorporation of papers by reference. I seem to be confused there. Like, what are these documents that can be incorporated in a will or a codicil? If you could kindly help me to understand that section.
Read it. Read that section.
Okay, Section 12, incorporation of papers by reference. If a testator in a will or codicil refers to another document, then actually written and expressing any part of...
Omwenga.
Hello.
Omwenga.
Basi tunaweza ongea tu.
Unaongea nini? Ala.
Ingi naandika asirike.
Zima hiyo kitu yako.
Basi aulizo, matesa nani Saimali niambia juzi, mbona
wewe Saimali sema nini?
Ama tumuulize.
Omwenga. Tulia na Saimo, kitu Saimo alikwambia. And can you speak the national language? You know, there's some languages that were already banned from being spoken. Like Kisi, that language is automatically out. Kiluya, out. Okay, we are still reviewing other languages. There are two languages that we need to deface. Kisis and Luyas, your languages are out. So that language, Mwenga, that language is not recognized. All right, so sorry, Penina. Let us go back to the reading.
It's okay, Mwalimu. At least she has made us laugh. Well, Section 12, Section 12, incorporation of papers by reference. If a testator in a will or codicil refers to another document, then actually written and expressing any part of his intention, the document where it is clearly identified as the document to which the will refers shall be considered as forming part of the will or codicil in which it is referred to.
Yes, that is clear. So you could make a reference to a document in a will. That document could be anything. That document in a will could be anything. It could be a title deed, it could be a logbook, it could be even maybe resolutions, it could be minutes of something. When you're writing a will, you can make reference to something that is in a document that is not the will. I don't know whether you're understanding. Okay?
Yes.
It's a very simple thing. So in making your will and distributing your properties, there could be something in another document. For instance, you could be having share certificates. Okay? You could be having nomination statements. Okay? You could be having bank account details. So when you make reference to something that is in a different document, or you could be having letters of allotment from the government, or you could be having, could even make reference to a gazette notice. So long as you're making a reference to a document that is not the will. Remember, the will is the main document, but you can refer to another document. Okay?
Yes.
So that is what it's saying. I don't know whether you're getting the gist.
Yes. I have understood it. I have understood it. Making reference to another document,
Yes.
then it becomes part of that will in support of what is already stated in the will.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
Okay, thank you, Mwalimu. Thank you.
All right. Nyokabi.
Good evening, Mwalimu. I think my question, it was just a clarification I wanted to make. You said that a will is valid within 3 months. Like basically, it will the person who's written the will has to have to pass within three months. So does that mean that every 3 months you have to review the will?
Where are you? Uko maeneo gani ya Kenya?
Unless I got you. I'm not sure if I got you correctly then.
Uko maeneo gani bana? Tuma location tukusalimie saa hii tu. Watu wako standby. Salamu iko kwa wingi sana. Now, what we have said is, Nyokabi, we are making reference. There are two things. There are two wills here. There's written wills and there's oral wills. Written wills don't have anything to do with 3 months. What you are saying is, for an oral will to be valid, wewe kama mwenye aliandika will lazima ukufe in 3 months. Usipokufa in 3 months, hiyo will yako ya oral itakuwa ime expire. Lazima uandike useme ingine ama uandike ingine. Tunaelewana?
Yes, I have understood. Thank you.
Yes, and the reason is simple. The reason is very simple. Okay, why? Because the law says that if you make an oral will, we kama Nyokabi ukiniambia sahi nikikufa hii shamba yangu iende nyanyangu na ukatae kukufa after 1 year, nitakuwa nimesahau kenye uliniambia. So that oral will not be valid because whatever you told me, I might have forgotten. Chances of forgetting after 3 months are very high. And that is why the law says that if you make a will, the testator must have died. If it is an oral will, the testator must have died within 3 months. It means if they die away out of 3 months, then that oral will is not valid. And therefore, that person did not leave behind a will. Okay? Because chances are, kenye uliniambia nimesahau. So, if you are sure you want to make an oral will, also talk to God and tell God that, my Lord, 3 months peke yake, on the dot unichukue. Asipokuchukua, utaandika will ingine. So that is only applicable to the oral wills. Tuko sawa?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Kamunyu.
Yes, my question is on the privileged wills. Now that our police service has been deployed to Haiti, can they enjoy that privilege?
What do you mean? Ukichukua
Can they?
kanjo, ukichukua kanjo peleke nini?
It's a trick question because they're going to do duties like that of our army. You know,
No, it's not the duties. Anybody can do that duty. Hata kanjo kipea bunduki na umwambie vile atashoot atafanya hivyo. You know?
So there
So
is no.
it's not it is only a reserve for members of the armed forces.
Okay.
Members, whether deployment is anybody can be deployed anywhere. Even the other day, KRA deployed their agents on Kenyans to do whatever they were doing. Anybody can be deployed, but remember, for there to be deployment within the meaning of what we're talking about, members of the armed forces and the merchant marine.
Second question, if I may allowed. Yeah. So in the case of audiovisual, so you're supposed to draw it down on paper within 3 months, and then do you seek for a certificate of you mentioned please remind me, do you seek that first to admit it as evidence and then you draw it down on paper, or you can
I'm not getting the question. Start again.
All right. So under audiovisual wills, for it to be admissible or to take effect, it should be drawn down to paper, right?
Who said that?
Okay, that is just for audio. I mean, oral wills, right?
Who said that as well? I didn't say such a thing.
Okay.
What I said is, let me repeat what I said. What I said is, oral wills, you can either have it orally, just vile nakwambia sahi, oral will, vile naongea. Sometimes, that is the first one. The second way is that sometimes you as the person I'm telling, you can decide to write what I'm telling you down. That is still oral will. Or sometimes you can take a video of what I'm saying. That is still oral will. Or sometimes you can record my voice. That is still an oral will. So there are various ways of coming up with an oral will. Okay, we have the two traditional ways, which is somebody said something orally, and that is what you crammed in your head, and then you waited until they're dead, and then you brought that forth. Or in the two cases I gave you, Wambwegi Konyo and the case of Rufus Ngefe, the testator said something, but the people, the witnesses that were listening, decided to write that down. Okay, it doesn't mean that all oral wills must be written down. No, you can decide to cram it. If you can cram it and wait until I'm dead and bring it up, or you can jot it down so that you don't forget what the testator said. So it doesn't mean that all oral wills must be written down to paper. Tuko sawa?
Yes, tuko sawa.
Okay. All right, guys, it is 36 minutes past the hour. It is 8:36 p.m. and you should get some rest. You should get some rest. I will stop the recording if there's no other question. Are we guys together? Somebody confirm, 2 of you, 3 of you?